Okay, we're gonna make a couple sourdough rounds, and we're gonna do it with a Banneton. But what if you don't have a Banneton? Well, that's the whole point of this. So no Banneton, no problem. We've got a solution for that. So if you're new to baking, no, we're not gonna break bread, that happens at the end. So if you're new to baking sourdough bread, you may not have purchased all the equipment, because this is a big project and it can be kind of intimidating, and you don't wanna spend a whole bunch of money on a bunch of stuff that you end up quitting because you don't like baking bread. So baskets kind of fall in that category. How do you get started making sourdough with as little equipment as possible? You use a sandwich loaf pan, 9x5 loaf pan, or you're making your bread free form and you're not using the basket. I think eventually everybody should use a basket to cold proof their bread. A lot of magical things happen with this method of sourdough baking. Now, you can get 2 of these on Amazon for like $25 to $30. They last a really long time if you take care of them. But let's say you're not ready to buy the baskets. We have some alternatives. You can use a bowl, and that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna make, or we're not gonna do it. You're gonna watch this happen. There's gonna be bread that gets proofed here, dough that gets proofed in a bowl, and dough that gets proofed in a basket, and you'll be able to see side by side just a comparison of what results get produced. Now, this is I think it's technically supposed to be a 10-inch Banneton, but you order stuff on Amazon, it shows up and it's really 9 inches, and it's about 3.5 inches tall. This bowl is 8 inches and about 3 inches tall. This would be a stupid choice of a bowl. It's way too deep and it's way too small. This would work. This is acceptable, but you're gonna have to shrink down your size because the dimensions are a bit smaller. So real quick, I'm talking about dimensions of the bowl, but we gotta talk about the volume and quantity of your dough. So this basket is ideal for a 400 to 500 gram batch of dough. When I say 400 to 500 grams, I'm talking about purely the flour weight. Of course, the dough is gonna weigh more when we add in starter water and salt. Recipe in the description, but I'm just gonna say 400 to 500 grams works nice in here. Here, I would say 500 grams would be pushing it. There's not enough volume in the bowl to accommodate the dough. But let's go. We're gonna jump in. I'm not gonna teach you how to make dough. We're not gonna go through stretching and folding or bulk fermentation. We're gonna jump in right here with dough that has finished bulk fermentation. And it's going to get shaped into 2 rounds. And this is a double batch. This is actually an 800 gram batch of dough. And I'm dividing it here at the end of bulk fermentation. You could absolutely make 2 individual batches of dough. Always make 2. So you've got 1 to give away, and you get more practice stretching, folding, mixing, and then of course shaping and scoring. Shorten your learning curve by always making 2, and who doesn't love to receive fresh baked bread? It's the ultimate gift. So these 2 rounds are shaped, and I'm going to coat them in a little bit of rice flour on the presentation side. And the presentation side is gonna go face down inside the bowl, inside the basket. And I'm using these really thin handkerchiefs. Check it out, super thin. They're about 19 by 19, just your classic 99-cent Walmart handkerchief. They're like $1. You could use this thing if you're using a basket, but even if you were using a basket and you did spend the 30 bucks and you've got 2 of these things now, I would go with some sort of like linen napkin, because these have these massive seams that prevent the dough from really sitting nicely and forming to the shape of the basket. So anyway, you're gonna need the handkerchief or some type of tightly knit dish towel or linen napkin or whatever to line your bowl, because we wanna prevent the dough from sticking to the bowl. We've put a light coating of rice flour. If you don't have rice flour because you aren't willing to buy Bannetons yet, you probably have bread flour, because that's what you made your dough with, and you can use that. I don't recommend it because it will get gummy and it will stick more to the dough. You won't be able to get it off when we go to bake it. So rice flour is kind of the best for this. So the dough is in the bowl. We're gonna take the excess little ears of handkerchief. We're gonna fold it up and just wrap it up like that. There's no other plastic wrap or lid required. It's gonna go in the fridge. Now the one in the basket, we're gonna match it up apples to apples. I'm gonna use the same kind of handkerchief Although normally I go bare into the Banneton with the dough after I rice flour it. The rice flour really dries out the surface of the dough to have a nice skin, and I get better airflow and drying when I go no napkin, no towel, no handkerchief, no liner. So I like that, and you can get away with it with rice flour. Bread flour, you do run the risk of it sticking. So bread flour, you can get away with it, but if you're gonna try and go for a long period of time in the fridge, like a good 24 to 36 hours of cold proofing, you're gonna really struggle to get it out if it's naked in the Banneton. So your call, however you wanna do that. But I would say get some rice flour at some point because it makes all the difference. Now, what's the disadvantage of the bowl? Why upgrade and buy these baskets if we don't need to, if we can get away with using the bowl? So I mentioned airflow. There is no airflow here. So it's not gonna breathe, it's not gonna dry out as it sits in the refrigerator, and it's not gonna form a really dry skin. And the skin makes it, the thicker the skin gets and the drier the surface of the dough is, the thicker our crust is gonna be in our end result. And we're making rounds, and rounds should be a rustic, thick crusted, crusty, messy when you cut it loaf of bread. And although we're gonna get away with it with the bowl, that's gonna be like the one piece that's missing here is the drying out and the formation of a crust. Skin to make a crust. So how long do they go in the fridge? Well, we're cold proofing, and there's a lot of cool things that happen in the fridge. So we're gonna slow down the development of the dough, and we're gonna make it take a longer period of time. So there's gonna be enzymatic reactions that break down some of the gluten proteins and make them more digestible. We're gonna have more flavor development the longer that it sits in the fridge, and of course we're developing that skin that's gonna make it easier to score and also have a thicker crust. The other benefit of going in the refrigerator here is the fact that we don't have to bake our bread or dough until we want to. So at minimum, it's got to be in there for 8 hours. At the max, 48. So you have a big chunk of time to decide when you want to bake these 2 loaves of bread that are in the fridge, whether you're using a basket or the poor man's basket, Banneton basket, which is a bowl. So you can really take back a lot of control of your schedule. Okay, so it is coming up on 24 hours later here. These guys are coming out of the fridge. I'm gonna bake, which one am I baking first? This one. And I'm gonna score it. I'm gonna try and score them the same and go apples to apples. When I was shaping these, I kind of made the dough, I lopsided more of the weight of the dough into the basket because this little glass bowl is a little bit small, and I didn't want it to erupt over the surface of the rim of the bowl, which it kind of does anyway. So I'm gonna tip it out and I'm gonna score it. We're gonna go cast iron, hot cast iron. I'm not really going through the details of baking, but basically cast iron pot with the lid, preheated at 450, until the oven comes up to temp, and then maybe like for another 10 minutes. We want this cast iron to create extra heat on our dough so we get oven spring. So the dough explodes and expands and erupts in that seam that we created, or that score mark. So, we get more volume in our loaf of bread. If you don't score it, the dough will, spring in whatever weak spot in the dough that it finds. So the scoring is important to guiding how our bread expands in the oven. It's gonna get baked for 45 minutes at 450 in the hot cast iron covered. You don't need to turn it, you don't need to touch it, don't mess with it. When the timer goes off after 45, here it comes. This is what it looks like. And now we've got our other batch of dough to do. And when you look at this one that is in the glass bowl, like it pops out no problem. We've got that light little coating of rice flour. There's hardly any to brush off. And I don't know if you can see it, but I can feel it scoring it. The skin that's developed is much thinner. And you can see on the handkerchief, like the big round wet spot, that's condensation from the bowl, from the glass and the ambient temperature that was in the dough. Because the dough is room temperature, it went in the fridge, and it's getting cooled off. And there's moisture that gets extracted out of the dough. So you can see really clear example with that giant round wet spot on the handkerchief of the fact that we just don't have any airflow and we're not getting the same drying effect here. But it's a beautiful shape. This is, it looks good just as a, dough on the parchment paper. trying to score it the same. I want them to look as the same as possible. And of course it doesn't have the cool, you know, circular rings and spirals from the basket because we went in a bowl. But we're gonna bake it the same, hot cast iron, 450, 45 minutes. And then when it comes out, here it is. This is what it looks like. It's a cool little loaf of bread. It's a little smaller on purpose because I wanted it to fit in the bowl. Maybe how much smaller? Maybe 80 grams of dough smaller, just a little bit, maybe 100. And I'm gonna cool these off. And so yes, it goes back in the oven. So I take it out, and because 45 minutes, it's cooked, but it's still a little blonde. And I liked it to have like just a bit of a darker coloring on the crust. So they did both go back in the oven naked to just get more color. And these are the finished loaves. They've been toasted. They're beautiful. They both look great. And you could almost make a case here for, well, why would I buy the baskets if I can make bread that looks this good? Well, although the crumb is amazing and the crust is good, if you look at this picture, I'm almost splitting hairs, and maybe I'm just mentally biased because I'm already thinking it. But if you look at the crust here on this upper rounded edge, the one on the left is the one in no Banneton, the one on the right is with the Banneton. And you can see the one on the right, it's just got a little bit thicker crust. And on the bottom, the crust is about the same because they both had the same exposure to the refrigerator, you know, just covered in the handkerchief with no contact in the basket. So the bottom was real similar. And you can see it slightly here. I guess I could have gotten a tape measure out, but I didn't feel like it's enough of a visual difference to really be able to measure it with a tool like a tape measure. But eating it, like taking a slice, it's way more apparent to the sensation in your mouth when you're biting through that crust on the top surface of the one in the bowl and then the one that was made in the Banneton. You can definitely get more of that crisp, crackly, thicker crust sensation on the one that was in the Banneton. Now, if you don't know any better, like you don't have a Banneton, you just make one in a bowl or a couple loaves using a bowl, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be amazing. You can serve it to people at your house, be super proud of it. It's gonna look great, and they're gonna think it's awesome. Now, when you go to reheat this, so I think rounds are great for bringing to the table. You know, you cool them off, you bake them ahead of time, and then you cut the thing in half just like I did in the video, and then you stand it on the cut side. You make slices, you put those slices on a sheet tray, boom, they go in the oven at 350, and you get it hot before it comes to the table. Getting it hot and getting it like more crisp is gonna make it feel like the crust is thicker anyway. So you're gonna get away with it. It's not gonna be a problem. This is an awesome solution for learning how to do a round, because you can't really do an oval here, but rounds really lend themselves to using this method of no Banneton. And you can use your cast iron, you can learn how to do cold proofing, and you're gonna make some ridiculous bread. So try it out, you'll see what I mean. And eventually, when you're successful with this, upgrade to the Banneton and you'll really see your results change and your crusts get even better.